tutorial starts with a song, but it's only a few seconds long. Let's get started with animation. Hello folks, today I want to tell you something about adding two parameters together. Bifrost Graph Editor, create graph, and with the tab key you type in add. And here you have the add node. This is the node we're talking about today. There are so many, maybe thousands of purposes of this add node because it adds two values, this one and another one. Once you feed into the plus sign one value, a next plus sign appears and you can feed the next set of numbers in, and here comes the output, which is an addition of the vectors or the integer numbers or whatever. So let's talk about the add node, and be warned, the result of this tutorial is not going to be very sexy. You have to find your own ways around it. I create a plane, and in the attribute editor under polyplane you see that it's a plane with 10 by 10. That's the resolution of the geometry, and I do the same thing with a disk. And here is the resolution of the disk, 3 by 3, whatever. They're quite different in terms of resolution. If you have a look at the plane, it's much denser than this one, than the disk. But we don't care about this. We just move them a little bit apart and hide them, selecting both of them, pressing H. So they're hidden in the scene, but they're still in the scene. Now, I'm going to call up the Bifrost Graph Editor. I delete the input because input will be the two geometries. Don't move them together into this field, just separately. The plane, middle mouse button, and the disk, middle mouse button. Now, we cannot add geometries together. This doesn't make sense, but we can add the points of geometry together. And in order to do this, we need to get the points of these meshes out of the meshes. So we need points instead of geometry. And the command to do this is tab key, get point position. I just type in, because I use it so often, GPP, get point position, not the get particle solver properties, but the get point position. So this has a light blue output and this has a light blue input, so we can feed the data from the mesh into the get point position node. Let us copy this, Control C and Control V, paste it here, and now we make the connection from this shape, the plane, to the get point position node, and a different one right here. Now we can add things. Add. The add node gives us an error message because it needs input, otherwise it cannot add anything. So we feed in the point position, that's the position of all the points on our plane, into the add node. Now the add node loses its warning, so we just feed this in. Now it's adding these two geometry positions, not the geometry, the position of the vertices, and calculates the output. So if we feed in 1 1 1 and 1 2 3, we would get 2 3 4 right here. We could feed the output into the input of the output now, but we wouldn't see anything because these are just numbers, they're not geometry. And for that reason, there's a node which is similar to the get position. It's like the mirrored command, and it's called set point position. So I type in SPP, set point position, and that's an interesting node because it has a green input. We can feed the newly created by the addition node positions in here, and we need to tell the set point position node which geometry we want the manipulations of this add node be based on, and for example on the disk. So I feed the disk into this geometry here, and now out geometry of the set point position to the output. Before I do this, let's have a look at the scene. Nothing is here, and now I connect these 2 points, and now we see this interesting object. When we click on it, we see that it's a mess of, it's a really bad model. If we would have modeled it by hand, this would be really the worst case. And it's because the graph editor does not know which point to add to which point. And apart from that, we have different amounts of points. The plane has much more points than the disk. The addition works, but it doesn't make really sense. What we can do instead is we delete this connection here. Now we see nothing in the scene, and we try it with a plane. It won't be much different. So it's basically just adding up these things, and it's not really nice. So what we'll do instead now is we create a cone. And let us go to the polygon settings and raise the subdivisions. So we have more or less square parts here. And we hide it. And we reopen the Bifrost Graph editor. And with the middle mouse button, we feed the cone in here. And we just replace the... Actually, I could have just disconnected it. We can keep it. But now, instead of getting the point positions of the disk, we get the point positions of the cone. And let us see what we get now. This is quite an interesting object now, because it is like an addition, well, more or less, of the cone, because it goes upward, and of the plane. And now you can go into the history, for example, the plane, and change the subdivisions of the plane. And go to the attribute editor of the polygon cone and lower the subdivision axis, for example. This is what the add node does in this case. If you want to shade it, I mean, well, it's quite a messy geometry really. If you want to shade it, right mouse click and just, well, what can we do today? AI Toon. In order to activate the toon, we need to go to the render settings, because we need hard edges, Arnold Renderer, filter. And the Gaussian makes soft edges, and we need a contour, which means hard edges. Now, of course, we need a light, area light. It arrives here. We can just move it over here and further down. And we untick normalize, and we raise the exposure to, say, 2. Now let's have a look at the rendering in the viewport. This is an addition of the points of a cone and the points on a plane. If you want to clean up this geometry, this is a totally different subject, and you can do it not only in the Bifrost Graph editor, and I'm going to show you this in an upcoming tutorial. You need the node editor in Maya as well. Have a nice day. Bye bye.